as I would like to offer, in place of this visual representation of text and context, this visual representation of text and context. And then you got to let me know if I'm saying something similar to what you're saying. First of all, this is my representation of a word. This is my representation of context. This word and this arrow in here is actually a sample. It's a piece taken directly from this context. So I think in that sense I'm in agreement with you 100% that all is context. But I am saying you can make two distinctions I want to make. One between a word and context, because there's a distinction to be made between this and this, and then also between meaning and understanding. So let's just go on and see what you think. I like this representation of context because in my mind I'm defining context as all the information that's collected during any human experience. You mentioned a flow of context, and I'm saying that at all times the human mind is recording on 5 tracks, these 5 generalized senses. And I'm aware that there's debate in the scientific community about just how many senses we have, but there's agreement that we can generalize into 5 different senses. So I'm just saying at all times that we're conscious, the human mind is recording, the human brain is recording in these 5 tracks. Okay? Now beyond just the recording of this, there's a breakdown or a sample rate that the brain is doing. I know with visual input that we've studied it and we're familiar with the rate, and you can even fool the eye simply by producing pictures at a rate faster than it can make a distinction, right? We can simulate motion, that type of thing. Anyway, the thing about the human mind that's just amazing is we're an enormous comparison engine. We can compare any section of our samples with the previous section or the next section to come. We can even take this section here, construct a prediction, a predicted section, and then come out here and then compare the samples later with our prediction. Now, there's more than one way to imagine this next process, but let's just say that as the human brain, as recording context, as it's breaking it into these samples, there's another thing it does, and that is it creates cross-referenced files. I understand there's other possibilities here, but imagine, if you will, that the brain takes any one of these arrows. Let's say red is going to be oral input. It copies it and then separates it out from context and uses this as a cross-reference. This is an identifying sample that we can use. Anytime this same sound shows up and we get a match, we're able to then pull the cross-referenced file which holds which holds all context. I call this context pulling. We're able to pull, and this is done of course with every different type of information, every different sense, and we're able to context pull in this way. Okay, that's not a huge deal, but what's really interesting is what the human mind is capable of doing with this context. I wish I was in Adobe Illustrator. These little blocks should be transparent so that you can, put one over another and change the order and try to fit them. And this is something, the human brain, we can have a word we don't understand, and we can still try to make sense by putting context on either side of it and changing the order there. Maybe even insert some context and see if it helps us to come up with a useful understanding. All of this we're capable of doing in an attempt to reach understanding. And here I want to make the distinction between understanding and meaning. And let's use the dark cloud example that you brought up as making sense of samples, dark clouds, and understanding versus meaning. Okay, because we have this ability to pull our file, whether it's off of the sound of thunder, the sight of dark clouds, perhaps the smell in the air when it's getting very damp and moist, whatever the case, Each one of these allows us to pull context from a dark cloud experience. And remember what I said, we're capable then of making a prediction of rain and saying, when it rains, I'm going to feel it on my skin. I'm going to get wet. And this would be an attempt at understanding. And sure enough, if as we continue to record and break into sample and file and pull and compare, eventually when it rains, we say, aha, I have an understanding that is true. And I say true, but a better word might be useful, because I don't know exactly what I mean by true, but I have reached a useful understanding, even though there's no meaning. There's absolutely no meaning. A cloud has no volition, no sentience, no intellect, no intent. So by definition, at least, there's no meaning there, but we are capable of reaching an understanding. We use the term worldview. We can derive a useful understanding of our view of the world. Okay? Now, here, all of this I'm saying happens absent of words. This is all pre-language human workings of the brain.